Greetings, Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Oil crisis means a gas crisis. Is it Trump's crisis? Oh, yeah. It's because of him. But we don't know how long it's going to go on. We'll talk a little bit about that tonight. That's our lead story. At least that's in our thumbnail image this evening. But Pierre Poilievre on the Canadian side, actually I should say on the U.S. side, he is making headlines tonight down in the United States, and as a result up here in Kazakhstan, because he did that interview with Joe Rogan. So that is boosting his profile substantially. It's still perplexing to me, but I guess that's how you score political points, get yourself noticed. You have to get yourself on one of those prominent podcasts, mostly out of the U.S., because they have a large audience, or so goes the perception. Anyway, we'll talk a bit about that tonight as well. But the thing is, Poilievre is also making news because he is at a special engagement in New York tonight. So we're going to pick that up when we come back on the other side of this.
Maverick News isn't just a news outlet, it's a community of truth seekers. Your donation at freedomreporters.com fuels our mission to report the stories that mainstream media won't touch. Thank you, Maverick family.
Okay, so the leader of His Majesty's loyal opposition, Pierre Poilievre, conservative leader in Canada, is tonight delivering a speech on Canada-U.S. relations at the Foreign Policy Association in New York. Now, he is there. It is going on right now, but what we're doing to make sure you get everything in context and don't miss even a single frame of video, we're rewinding just a little bit because we're a little bit behind, so it won't be perfectly live. We're going to pick things up, just shift the time back just a few minutes so we can get it right from the beginning and bring it to you in its entirety. And here we go right now to New York.
Vision
Here he comes.
for a self-reliant Canada. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Poilevre.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup tout le monde. Thank you very much for that kind introduction, Noel. And whenever you say Brian Mulroney's name, a rush of memories come to mind, and many of the stories that he would share about his fond memories he would share of his visits to the United States of America, where he had many friends. And in fact, one of his favorite stories was when he and his finance minister were out dining just outside of Washington after a day of long diplomatic meetings. And they sat down at the dinner table, and the bread came, and then the waiter walked over with the butter, and he handed them each just one stick of butter. And there he was with his finance minister, who said, "Sir, is it possible for me to have another stick of butter?" And he said, "No, I'm under very strict orders. It's hard times. Everyone gets a single stick of butter." And Brian Mulroney said, "Well, do you know who we are? I'm the Prime Minister of Canada, and this is my finance minister. He decides who gets the money." And the waiter said, "Well, I'm the waiter, and I decide who gets the butter." And it was as simple as that, and a good reminder of who's really in charge in this country and in our shared continent, the people who do the work on the ground, who serve others, and reminds us that we indeed are servants ourselves. And we have some great public servants with us here today. We have the great Roman Baber, Member of Parliament for York Centre, who's joining us. We have my Shadow Minister of International Trade, Adam Chambers, is at the back. We have one of the great rising stars in our parliamentary caucus, an international trade lawyer, someone on whom I rely for great advice all the time, Jacob Mantle from Simcoe North, or from York Durham, sorry. And of course, my Shadow Minister of Canada-U.S. Relations, Shelby Cramp-Nyman. And what an auspicious time for us to be in the United States of America on the 250th anniversary of your Declaration of Independence. But it is another 250th anniversary. It's the quarter.
Want to know the weirdest thing
on.
I've noticed? Every time.
Shouldn't get that.
Published also in 1776. This duel, yes, give him a round of applause for Adam Smith.
He's
One of
talking
the
about Adam
great
Smith, the
economists
economist.
and philosophers of all time. This dual anniversary reminds us of the roots of Western economic freedoms. Free exchange is really the only key to the well-being of both commoners and country. As Smith wrote, commerce ought to naturally be among nations as among individuals, a bond of union and friendship. Those words are as true today as when he wrote them a quarter millennium ago. Free markets, free trade, free nations, and free people. The free market has been the single most powerful discovery for the material improvement in living standards, based on the free exchange of work for wages, product for payment, investment for interest. You know, in the 2.5 centuries since this idea was discovered, we have seen a spectacular increase in the quality of life of the human species. We went from having basically 2 millennia of no material improvement, no economic growth whatsoever, no gains in life expectancy, a period of time during which we had effectively sailboats and horseback as our mode of transportation, to a quarter of a millennia later, 250 years later, we've gone to having self-driving cars, jet engines, and spaceships. And annual economic growth has increased 200-fold. Life expectancies have more than doubled, diseases have been cured, and life has materially improved. It works best, this free enterprise system, when it works between countries, between nations like Canada and the U.S. Free trade between our countries have enriched us both. They have been an unqualified success. Yet, paradoxically, ironically, here we are today, clashing with tariffs, harsh words, boycotts, and other disputes. We need a road to repair the relationship and restore reciprocal free trade and security cooperation. And today, that is why I'm here, to make the case for Canada. I will make the case that Canada must be stronger at home, affordable at home, and safe at home so it can be unbreakable abroad. And I will also make the case that all of these things are mutually in the interest of the United States of America. Our two separate countries are always stronger when we work together in friendship. Aujourd'hui, je vais défendre le Canada. Je vais défendre l'idée qu'on a besoin d'un Canada plus fort, plus abordable et plus sécuritaire. C'est comme ça qu'on va vraiment devenir maître chez nous et qu'on aura vraiment un levier de négociation avec nos partenaires américains. The lessons of the past will guide us into the future. And the lesson of this continental history of ours is that our two countries have both been great and reliable allies and friends. Le libre-échange, ça fonctionne. Le libre-échange a toujours enrichi nos deux pays. Nos deux pays ont toujours été des amis et des alliés. Et c'est pourquoi on doit trouver des solutions pour réparer les relations historiques entre nos deux pays. On doit continuer de travailler ensemble afin d'augmenter les échanges et assurer la sécurité de notre continent. We know that history, we know the history that we share between us, but too often we've taken it for granted. So I'm just going to take a quick moment to remind us the very special thing that we have built together. We fought side by side in the trenches of France and Belgium. The U.S. War Department estimates that there were approximately 30,000 Americans who joined the Canadian Expeditionary Force to fight in World War I before the U.S. joined that war. We, as Canadians, were in World War II 2 years before the United States, and we declared war on Japan earlier in the day than you did after the attacks on Pearl Harbor, just to show how synchronized we are in our shared effort to defend the two countries. In addition to over 1 million Canadians who fought in Europe and North Africa, about 10,000 Canadians fought in the Pacific Theater, including to defend Hong Kong and your very own Aleutian Islands. A decade later, we joined with you. 26,000 Canadian troops went and fought to defeat communism in Korea under American leadership, 500 of whom gave their lives for freedom in a faraway peninsula. Around the same time, our countries established NORAD, an alliance to extend joint air defenses across North America, right up to the Arctic shores of Alaska and the Canadian North. Today, NORAD remains a model of successful military cooperation. After 9/11, there were 225 American aircraft that had emergency landings in Canada, where 33,000 stranded people were granted and cared for, given warm Canadian hospitality. And then 40,000 Canadian soldiers leapt into action to fight and avenge for America against the Taliban and Al-Qaeda, following your invocation, the only ever invocation of Article 5 of NATO's Charter. In fact, 158 brilliant Canadians gave their lives in that effort. And let's be clear, Canadians did not just show up in Afghanistan. We went to the most dangerous parts of that country. We went to Kandahar, to Panjwai district. We drove, our young men and women drove over improvised explosive devices, and we took on the nastiest and meanest terrorists anywhere on planet Earth. In fact, your elite special forces said that our JTF-2, the equivalent, was the first choice in their arsenal for any direct action. Thank you. And in 1954, we brought this partnership into economic infrastructure. We jointly built the new Seaway, effectively an H2O highway that went all the way from Thunder Bay and Duluth to France. This was an engineering masterclass, perhaps possibly unprecedented anywhere in the world, a feat of engineering and diplomacy that has perhaps never been matched by any two countries elsewhere. Our relationship is a two-way one. On top of the military and economic facts, there's the countless examples of the way we keep our people fed, safe, and comfortable. Even if they don't grab headlines, there are many things that are not sexy about the work we do together, but it makes our lives possible. For example, we jointly fight fires together. When Los Angeles was going up in flames recently, it was Canadian water bombers that were dousing those flames, scooping up waters from the Pacific and dumping them on the fire. Our RCMP and Coast Guard, your Coast Guard, our RCMP, they literally get on the same ships to patrol the Great Lakes. Our officers intermingle with yours with the common goal of securing our countries against smuggling and trafficking. Dans les dernières années, Hydro-Québec, une grande fierté des Québécois, et l'État de New York ont conclu une entente importante, une entente à long terme sur l'échange d'électricité. C'est la preuve que quand on travaille ensemble, nos deux pays peuvent avancer et prospérer. Closer to home, for most of you in this room, we have long-term electricity agreements where Quebec sells its surplus electricity into the New York market, powering your industries, and so that the lights come on when you flip the switch. These are the kinds of practical things that make us better off on both sides of the border. And this summer, of course, Our two countries, along with Mexico, will be co-hosting the world's biggest and most watched sporting event, the World Cup, where we all expect Canada to win. It'll be a little different than the last hockey game we have, but it's too soon to talk about that, isn't it? I see Roman's putting his head down. He's still hurting, but all in good fun. You know, as President Kennedy said, President Kennedy addressed our parliament, and he said, geography made us neighbors. History made us friends. Economics made us partners. And necessity made us allies. Those whom nature hath so joined together, let no man put asunder. So what has then gone wrong if the relationship is so solid and practical? Well, I think we have to go backwards in time to see how we got here. Just 10 years after the power of Western capitalism had buried rusted-out Soviet communism, we provided a new opening for an authoritarian powerhouse to quietly and rapidly sneak up on us. Beijing's communist regime was able to pursue economic enrichment without the corresponding political liberalization that the West had expected. And then one day, the West woke up, and we found that much of our industrial heartlands had been hollowed out. Regions were collapsing from job outsourcing. Our economies were reliant on a country that was, at best, a serious rival, and at worst, a hostile threat. Now, I seek no fight with China or its people, who constitute a brilliant and extraordinary civilization. In fact, if we're being honest with ourselves, China and its people have been outworking, outsmarting, and out-hustling us in the West for the last 30 years. This is a country that went from having 80% of its people living on less than $1 a day to being the second biggest economy in the world in 50 years. It has never happened. But China's rise has come at a serious cost to political and economic freedom in the world. And too often, Western countries and corporate interests have enabled it, sometimes naively, sometimes cynically. We, Canada and the United States, cannot afford to continue to ignore the ways in which Beijing's communist regime has used its growing economic power to threaten our vital interests. President Trump's efforts to prepare and protect the United States from this growing challenger, which is a regime, by the way, that our own Prime Minister in Canada called the single biggest threat to Canada, is fully founded. Canada, however, should be seen as a friend and not a foe in that effort. Instead of treating each other as rivals, Canada and the U.S. should look at the big picture. The real threats to our economies and to our security come not from each other, but from Beijing, from Moscow, from Tehran, and from their proxies. Instead of fighting tariff wars with each other, Canada and the United States should be tearing down tariff walls that we have and forging a
the shadow of Jesus Christ, the tabernacle.
That we can afford to treat the current and very real problems we have between Canada and the United States as a permanent end to our relationship. They're not. We're always going to live next door to each other. We're always going to have friendly relations between peoples. I've just finished an incredible tour. Detroit, Houston, Austin, here to New York. Everywhere I go, people love Canadians. We have an incredible friendship. Our peoples love each other. And we live right next door to each other. We have shared border. We have the longest undefended border in the history of the world. And as you know, geography is permanent. No one can call a realtor and just move somewhere else. And the truth is, we wouldn't want to. This relationship has been a spectacular success over 2 centuries. My goal, therefore, is to rebuild that relationship, to promote free trade, to end U.S. tariffs on aluminum, autos, and lumber, to name a few. Let's forge a new tariff-free auto pact to protect North American production. Let's have a full exemption from Buy America so that Canadian construction companies can sell into American procurement markets. And let's relaunch the Keystone XL pipeline to deliver more affordable Canadian energy into American hands at good prices. I'm here today to restore and renew our friendship and to bring affordability, security, and strength to the peoples of both of our two separate countries. I'm here to pitch Americans on a simple proposition. Canada can help you solve your biggest challenges in America: affordability for your citizens and safety in a dangerous world. For example, Americans today more than ever are overpaying for food, fuel, and homes. Canada can help with all three. We are home to the world's fourth biggest supply of oil, and we provide by far the most stable and reliable of all of the countries that you could buy from. For comparison, the other three in that top four are Venezuela, Saudi Arabia, and Iran. Take your pick. All of them are in the news, and not for good reasons right now. I was just in Houston the other day. I was at the Houston Tank Terminal, and I saw where the Keystone Pipeline actually emerges from the ground. So I very playfully asked the engineer, what if I were to crawl into that pipeline and can keep crawling until my head surfaced somewhere? Where would I end up? They said, well, in the middle of rural Alberta, where it goes in the town of Hardisty. Incredible town. 600 people live there, and their tank farm handles $100 billion of oil. So in this town of 600 people, they handle what is equivalent of the GDP of many countries, just to illustrate the incredible genius of our trades workers and our engineers. But that oil then comes to Houston, where it is treated and shipped to the world. It is actually controlled out of a command center in downtown Calgary, even though it's in Houston. And not far away from there in Baytown, Texas, 2,000 workers refine and turn Canadian energy into asphalt, jet fuel, gasoline, and every other use. I just want to put this into perspective, because it is true that Canada has a trade surplus with the United States of America for one reason: because we sell the United States an enormous quantity of underpriced natural resources, which you then feed into your industry and turn around at massive profits to your people. The $100 billion of oil that we sell the United States of America is converted into $350 billion of products that you consume or sell to the rest of the world. And the difference goes into the paychecks of your workers. 70% of our exports to the United States of America is not for end-use consumption, but for production and increased value that you add to those things. So in other words, we are not competing with you for production. Canadian workers are not replacing American workers in the supply chain. We are feeding into your supply chains, and you are massively increasing the value and turning that value into bigger paychecks, particularly for blue-collar, working-class Americans. And it is ironic that because we have not built up more infrastructure east-west in our own country, we're effectively using, your workers are able to use our resources for their paychecks. So you are big winners as a result of importing our resources. Now, if you look at what we could do with this relationship today, we could increase Canadian oil exports to the United States of America by 2 million barrels, which would allow you to bring down your gas prices and ultimately become less reliant on what happens over in the Middle East. Now, we can't obviously do it in time for this particular crisis. However, what about the next one? When is the best time to prepare for a crisis? 10 years ago. Well, we should be preparing now to make sure America has a reliable supply of oil for the medium and long term, so that never again do Americans have to pay $5 a gallon for gas. An agreement, a renewed USMCA that includes permitting additional oil production and approving U.S. pipelines on the south side of the border could both create jobs for Americans, but also reduce costs for your consumers. And as I said, while none of this can be done in the short term, we have to get moving now to prepare for the next term. And then there's trucks. The Ford F-Series has been the single greatest selling truck in the United States of America for 45 years. It has a military-grade aluminum shell for a body, one of its great features. That's the good news. The bad news is you simply cannot make enough aluminum in the States for those trucks. You don't have the bauxite or the affordable electricity necessary to turn bauxite into alumina. We do. We have enormous surpluses of aluminum. But the current tariff drives up the cost for Ford to make those trucks, which makes it harder for them to produce trucks made by America, and ultimately drives up the cost of those trucks for electricians in Ohio, miners in Appalachia, and energy workers in Texas. Get rid of that tariff and you lower the cost of trucks for working class Americans, and you increase production of those vehicles. There's lumber. Your young people struggle to afford homes, particularly in cities like New York. 80% of your lumber imports for home building come from Canada. The 45% tariff on Canadian lumber increases housing costs by making it more expensive to build. Eliminating this Biden-era tariff would make home building more affordable, which means more jobs for your carpenters and more homes for your youth. There are countless other goods and services Canadians can profit from delivering to you tariff-free that will make life more affordable for American consumers and businesses. Simply put, a strong Canada is vital for your economic interests, but also for your security interests. Obviously, we control the biggest airspace and seas and landmass in the hemisphere. We are the only thing between you and Russia. Forget that sometimes. I mean, other than Santa Claus, he's up there too. But he's not going to protect you from the Russians. There's unanimous consensus that Canada needs to massively build up its military. The Canadian Armed Forces must be capable of protecting every square inch of seas, skies, and soil. We understand we have to do more. That will not only secure us, but it will keep your northern flank secure. What is more, we have the materials of modern warfare. For example,
one of the great challenges in this world
that are going to be necessary to fight a future war. Aluminum that strengthens aircraft and armored vehicles. Gallium that powers semiconductors and radar systems. Germanium, which enables night vision technology. Graphite is essential for batteries. We also have lithium for the same purpose. Tungsten goes into armor-piercing ammunition and also into medical imaging equipment. Cobalt brings heat-resistant alloys that you put in your fighter jets so that they can operate under incredible stress. Canada is actually the global producer of more than 60 minerals and metals and holds the largest deposits of high-grade uranium, which you will need for nuclear power and other uses. And of course, we have the biggest supply of potash, which is one of the 3 top ingredients for fertilizer so that you can eat. No modern economy or military functions without secure energy and minerals. And that's why I have proposed that Canada establish a strategic minerals and energy reserve that would be available to our tariff-free allies, giving preferred access to those countries that work with us. It will give us increased leverage in these forthcoming negotiations, and it will keep both of our countries secure if, God forbid, we ever have to fight a common enemy. Access to this reserve could be a key part of the renewed USMCA following this summer's review. Canada is also going to be spending hundreds of billions of dollars on an unprecedented buildup of our armed forces to rebuild our capabilities. We believe that the degree to which we make those purchases from our American friends should be directly proportional to the degree we get access to free trade in the forthcoming review of the USMCA. Ma vision pour le Canada est très simple. Je veux construire un Canada plus fort et plus abordable pour rétablir notre amitié avec les États-Unis et faire la promotion du libre-échange avec nos alliés historiques. C'est comme ça qu'on va défendre nos valeurs et assurer notre sécurité. That is my vision for a stronger Canada, a renewed friendship with the United States, a world in which free trade between free markets works for free people, a bulwark against the alternative vision promoted by unfree powers, nations that do not share our values or our interests. Now, many of you will have recognized the quote I used of John F. Kennedy not long ago, that geography, history, economics, and necessity have bound us together. But what you might not know about that speech is that he actually spoke much more frankly about the challenges in that relationship, about its inevitable stresses and tensions, but that those things could be overcome with a common vision and pursuit. The pursuit of freedom, of individual liberty, of democracy, provides us with the perspective to work through our many differences. So let me close by quoting the prescient words of JFK that he gave to our House of Commons in 1961. We are bound to have our differences and disappointments, and we are equally bound to bring them out into the open, to settle them where they can be settled, and to respect each other's views when they cannot be settled. Thus, ours is the unity of equal and independent nations, co-tenants of the same continent, heirs of the same legacy, and fully sovereign associates in the same historic endeavor to preserve freedom for ourselves and all who wish it. Thank you very much.
But wait, there's more.
Thank you for your remarks. We are pleased to be joined by Catherine Lubier, who flew in this morning from California to be with us. Catherine served as a senior advisor to Prime Minister Stephen Harper and most recently represented the province of Quebec here in New York City, where she played a central role in advancing major cross-border energy and trade initiatives. At present, she advises global companies on public policy, governance, and Canada-U.S. relations. We're going to turn to Catherine to engage Mr. Poilevre in a fireside chat. So we're just going to set that up very quickly.
One moment. Let's see if we can get rid of this static. Here we go. Hang on, just getting it set up for you. And we go back to New York City. Here we go.
A number of Canadians in New York City that do extraordinary work all over the C-suite. There's a lot of them tonight in the room, so I want to say hello to everyone. You know, and you've named a few things that, well, a lot of things that we're doing together. Here in New York City, when I was a diplomat, I mean, I could witness, you know, roads being done with cement and asphalt from Canada. I'm very proud that the hydro project, you know, the largest binational energy project that we have, is going to be completed in the spring. And so energy will start flowing on that new line, which is an engineering work that's been going on for I don't know, 4 or 5 years now, all the way to Astoria, Queens in New York, and we'll start powering New York. So this is the kind of collaboration that we've been working on. My friend, Yannick Nézet-Séguin, has been conducting the Metropolitan Opera for over a decade, a guy from Montreal. So it makes me extremely, extremely proud when I see all of that between Canada, but in particular Quebec and New York. Now, you talked about it, there is headwinds in the relationship. And I, for one, think it's extremely important to engage with Americans right now. We need to be out here, and I really want to give you immense credit for being in Michigan, for being in Texas yesterday, and for being with us in New York today. So thank you for being here, and welcome to New York City again. So a lot of people in the room haven't had a chance to meet with you yet. You've talked about the economy and trade. Can you elaborate a little bit on your philosophy and your principles with regards to economy and trade?
Well, going back to first principles, at the risk of being repetitious, I genuinely do believe in Adam Smith's vision of free enterprise, that voluntary exchange is the single greatest source of economic well-being, that this means, in practical terms, very small government, low taxes, limited regulatory barriers, extremely fast permitting, and for the government to focus on doing a few things right rather than doing a lot of things poorly. Narrowly focused on national defense, borders, basic infrastructure, a safety net for people who can't provide for themselves, but then get out of the way of workers, entrepreneurs, and consumers to let them exchange with one another and get better off. In Canada, this means the areas where this is most practically needed is in natural resources and home building. We should be the fastest place on earth to get a permit to dig a mine, a well, build a pipeline, expand a port, or build a home so that our young people can afford a place to live. Those are just some of the examples of how this plays out. But very clearly, what we see when we look around the world is the countries that have the most economic freedom, have the highest standard of living, the least poverty, the best life expectancy, all of the best social conditions. They're all in places with free enterprise. So my purpose is to make Canada the freest economy in the world.
So we heard Prime Minister Carney recently lay out a vision and a partnership with China. So when you think about the strains in the relationship of the United States, and I think that's partly why he did that, what are the differences that you can think about in trade between China and, say, the United States?
Well, I'm not going to disparage my Prime Minister on foreign turf, so I won't counter his position here. There'll be plenty of time for that in the House of Commons. Please tune in at 2:15 Monday through Thursday for question period, and we'll try to put on a good show. So have your popcorn ready. But here, I would just say, look, we trade. This is not a criticism of the Prime Minister. It's just my view. You've asked me to compare the Chinese market with the American market. We've got to trade and talk with China, and we have to engage with that country. As I said, it's a brilliant civilization and an incredibly industrious people. But there is no getting away from the fact that we sell 20 times as much to the United States as we sell to China. We live right next door. The United States, American capitalism is the most powerful force in the history of economics. The American military is by far the most powerful military in the history of armaments. And of course, the American people are our friends. So our alliance, our historic alliance with the United States, is far more important and far more immediate, and we must do everything we can to preserve it.
And you've talked about the trade. We have over 60% of trade with the U.S. now, and we do have over 50 free trade agreements with the world, 3/4 of the GDP. It is important to diversify as well, but it's a fraction of what we can achieve by keeping our relationship with the U.S. and even expand it. How do you see the diversification versus engaging and keeping trade with the U.S.?
Well, I think we can do both. I think the two are additive. One does not replace the other. When we increase exports overseas, it's not to subtract them from the United States, it's to add to them. Even if we were to somehow amazingly manage to replace all of our exports to the United States with some other country, we would be no further ahead. We would be where we are right now. And of course, that could never even happen. The things that we need to do to diversify overseas are principally things that we need to do at home. As you said, we already have 50 free trade agreements. The challenge is not that other countries won't let our products in, it's that we have a hard time getting them out. Give you one example, or two examples very quickly. One new pipeline to Canada's west coast, one, would allow for more overseas exports than we currently do all year with China. So one pipeline would be more economically important than our entire export to the U.S. to China. I'll give you another example. I was just in North Germany the other day. They were relying almost exclusively on the Russians for their gas. Russia invaded Ukraine in February of 2022. By May, they had a permit for a brand new import terminal. By Christmas of that year, they had completed that terminal and were accepting their first shipments. 95% of that natural gas comes from the United States of America, even though Canada has half the shipping time to Europe, and it's 25% cheaper to liquefy in Canada because of our cold weather doing a lot of the work for us. Why were the ships that I looked out at sea and saw bringing the gas in, why was that coming from the U.S. Gulf Coast, from Louisiana and Texas, and not from Atlantic Canada? Because we don't have any LNG plants in Atlantic Canada today. And we don't have them because we don't have the permits. So our biggest obstacle to diversifying trade are restrictions we impose on ourselves. But the good news is we can remove those restrictions and we can reach the world with our abundant resources.
So let me ask you this. If you, how could you make the case to President Trump on expanding trade and free trade with Canada? And in other words, tell us what would your elevator pitch, if I may, would be.
Well, I don't even need an elevator. One word. Leverage. We need leverage in these negotiations. And the president said so himself in his book, The Art of the Deal. The most important thing in trade,
Disappear for a month.
We are your biggest external supplier of energy and raw materials. We have 10 of the 12 NATO-defined defense minerals that are necessary for national security in the 21st century. We are responsible for the biggest share of airspace, water, and land in the entire hemisphere, which means that we are vital to the national security of the United States, and we are about to carry out the biggest single military buildup in our country's history, which will mean lots of procurement opportunities for firms in partner countries. I want to bundle all of that up as in one word and say that is our leverage. We can make America more affordable, safer, and richer if we have tariff-free trade between our two separate countries, and both of us will win.
No, and you talked about leverage, and you described your idea of creating a reserve of resources that you can share, and I want to also give a little bit of context on Canada, and you know this well, but Canada has a massive exodus of foreign direct investment. We haven't been able to catch up to productivity in companies. Unemployment is high. It's even higher in youth. Our debt and our deficit have nearly doubled. You've been out there with Canadians. You've listened to them. You have offered them the promise of Canada, to bring back the promise of Canada. And you know how Canada is in a situation right now where we don't really have a choice but to develop our resources. So when you talk about leverage, with resources, are there any other industries that you see that we can develop and take down the barriers, accelerate permits to do more business with the United States and have this leverage with the administration as well in our negotiations?
Well, listen, I would focus on energy across the board. Your home province, it's hydroelectricity with the prodigious rivers of La Belle Province. In my home province, it's oil and gas. We have by far the greatest supply of natural resources per capita of any country on earth, far more than we could ever use. For context, we have enough natural gas in Canada alone to supply the world with all of its needs for 200 years. That is to say, if every other country on Earth ceased to produce natural gas, we could supply the world for the next 2 centuries with today's technology. That's just one subsector. So now we need to unblock and unlock those resources. That will boost our dollar and our purchasing power so that life is affordable for our people. It will make us a geostrategic superpower in the modern economic and security environment. And it will help our allies power their economies as well.
And it's difficult because, you know, even the pension funds in Canada are largely invested in the U.S. now. So what do you do to attract again foreign direct investment in Canada? Because, you know, this is very worrisome fundamentals that we're looking at for our economy in Canada.
So I think we should look at some of the success stories we have in our nation. I mentioned the town of Hardisty, which is 600 people and $100 billion of oil go through its tank farm. Why Hardisty? Why did they set up there? Because the town has 1 week permitting. If you want a permit to build anything, a house or a tank filled with oil and gas, it takes 1 week to get that permit. And there's obviously, they have to meet all the same safety standards and all of the same environmental standards, so it's not safe. The people enjoy excellent drinking water. They can swim in the local lake. It's a beautifully safe and pristine place, but they can do it with 1 week permits. And when I actually called the municipal district, and I said, I'd like to make a video about this achievement. Is there someone there who can talk to me about it? They said, no. The guy who stamps the permits is a farmer, and he's busy. He doesn't have time to have conversations. If you want to get a permit, drop off your application, and we'll get back to you later in the week. They have no bureaucracy. They just get out of the way. Yes, they protect nature and the environment, but they get it done. Another example is the great Haisla people in northwestern British Columbia, who signed a deal to allow LNG Canada, a $40 billion LNG export terminal, the only one we have on any coast in Canada, that will basically end poverty in their Indigenous community, but also allow us to sell our natural gas in Asia, displacing dirtier coal-fired plants. These are the kinds of success stories that we have to build on by looking how local leaders who've delivered permits, who've unlocked prosperity, so that we can do that at a national level.
Thank you. Well, I mean, we've covered a lot of topics. Is there a message you want to leave with our American friends, our distinguished friends? Thank you for being here today. You've been in the U.S. for what, a few days, few weeks now. Is there something you want to leave them with tonight?
Well, I want to thank you for the welcome. It's been just so wonderful for Anna and I to be in America. The people are so friendly everywhere we go. The people love Canada, and it just reminded me that this is a relationship that will overcome the present day disagreements, that our children and grandchildren will grow up in 2 different countries that share a long-standing bond. It has been centuries old now that we have worked together, that we have kept our continent safe and made it one of the most prosperous places in the history of the world. So let's build on that incredible success. Let's resolve our differences and march forward to a shared partnership between our 2 countries. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for stopping by in New York City. Thank you to the FPA for tonight, and everybody can join us for a reception in the back. Thank you very much.
All right, and you can join me for a reception right here on Maverick News, because the party continues on the other side of this.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News. Maverick News. Defending free speech. Free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Too late. Too late. Too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
So, what did you think? I'm going to go to the chat on Rumble. And then I'm going to tell you what I think. Party time. That's right, belovely. It is party time. It's time to review what Pierre Poilievre had to say there. He said, a lot, and also was restrained. And I thought that he was classy about it. And I think he did it the right way. He didn't hammer on Canada. He didn't hammer on Mark Carney or the Liberals. He didn't use the platform tonight over in New York and his profile to hammer on the government to score political points. He took the high road, and that was the right thing to do. He was there as an ambassador from Canada, and I thought he did an excellent job of promoting our country, promoting trade, free trade, and overall, I thought that his message was very positive, bringing his vision for enhanced trade forward. But I'm not so sure it is enhanced trade, and I'll explain what I mean by that after I look in the chat here and get your thoughts on this. So Dragon says reception with Rick. That's right. ProImmune says, oh, I will, Rick. I'm not sure what I said that you're responding to. Anybody have any thoughts? ProImmune says, what a fool. He does not seem to understand Trump is not our friend. There will be no negotiating. Kinda. Yeah, I think that's right. I don't think he's a fool. I think he's trying to deal with the whole thing diplomatically. And Rosemary Mack says, Lindy, yes, bridal falls high and dry. Don't know what that means. He made some good points. I agree, says ProImmune. Yep, he did. Dragon says he has a few thoughts. Very diplomatic, he says, yes. CBC Brown says better than Carney. And Lindy says the Rising Dragon. I can't see what the little graphic is that you attached there. I can't tell what that is. Thumbs up, maybe? Not sure. Well, okay. Here's the deal. This trip has paid off for Pierre Poilievre because he scored that interview with Joe Rogan. So there is that. He's on this tour trying to share his vision for trade and what Canada should be and enhanced or better relations on the trade file between not just the United States, but all of Canada's allies. Very positive message. It's somewhat different than what Mark Carney puts forward, but both of them, I think, trying to do the right things for Canada. So I applaud that. That's a good thing. He did highlight some very important things, and he is playing a bit of a word game here because he is being diplomatic when he's referring to these tariffs and talking about tariff-free trade. What he doesn't mention, it has been mentioned actually by Mark Carney, but not highlighted a lot because the Trump administration just keeps spinning this narrative that Canada has these awful tariffs in place, and that's why Trump started the trade war, the tariff war. and that is something of a lie. Canada didn't start the tariff war. What are you talking about, Rick? You see, when Poilievre is down there talking about the need for tariff-free trade, he's making it almost sound, because the rhetoric coming from the White House has been so aggressive, portraying Canada as being so unfair to the United States, that it makes it, it sounds like when he's talking about getting rid of tariffs, it sounds like he's talking about Canada. See, the problem is somewhere between 95 and 98% of all goods exported from the United States that come into Canada enter Canada tariff-free already. Oh, I didn't know that. Right? I know. Very few people do know that. So as trading relationships go, the current trade agreements between Canada and the United States prior to the tariff war, our relationship was one of the most open anywhere in the world, maybe the most open and most tariff-free already. Then Trump comes along and starts punching us in the face. And every time you turn around, it's not a fair deal. We pay for the whole Gordie Howe Bridge, and he says that the United States needs a better deal. I mean, it's insane. It literally is insane. How do you deal with this guy? Nobody wants to deal with him anymore. It's very much different than it was during Trump 1.0. Trump 2.0, the Trump train has gone off the rails. Poilievre is down there being diplomatic. When he's talking about tariff-free trade, he knows, and I think he's actually referring to getting rid of all these crazy tariffs from Trump more than what Canada has in place. See, in Canada, yeah, we have some strategically placed tariffs on dairy, and I've explained why that isn't even a threat to the United States, because even there, we still allow about $1 billion worth of dairy into Canada from the United States every year. About $1 billion. And then anything above the quota that is imposed on what we allow into the country is subject to these tariffs, which seem crazy at I think it's 250%. But after a certain percentage, it doesn't really matter how much the tariff is, because what's really happening is the government is saying we just won't accept any more imports. But Canada doesn't dump dairy into the U.S. It would be a completely different story if we were producing a lot of milk and dairy products and then just dumping them into the United States below market value, as the Chinese are known to do from time to time with various products. But Canada doesn't do that. Anyway, yeah, so we have a strategic tariff in place in order to ensure price stability for our dairy farmers. So there is that. That's really, at the heart of a lot of this. There are also tariffs in place for poultry. I wonder, wasn't there something going on with birds at one point recently at a farm someplace that everybody thought was about an issue that maybe was really more about tariffs and big agriculture, corporate interest, big ag business, agricorps, and I'm just maybe. So there's all that. And then games being played. So there's all that. And then we also have some tariffs on lumber. There's the softwood lumber issue that always rears its head. So there's a bit of a sore point there on the softwood lumber issue, because Canada has an advantage with lumber. Part of that advantage, though, is not just that we have a lot of trees and a big lumber industry. It's that the quality of the lumber we have available, because of the temperature, the climate we have, and the way that the trees grow, makes for a better product, largely, than they can get in many parts of the United States. So a lot of builders, home builders and construction companies go after Canadian lumber because it has various qualities to it that makes it preferred. And I can tell you too that if you talk to a lot of contractors and construction firms up here in Canada, they complain that the best Canadian lumber always gets shipped to the United States and Canada gets left with the scraps. Well, there is an argument that we've recently heard about how all Alberta's oil or grain gets stolen and Alberta gets left with the scraps. I'll make a comment about that because it kind of came up inadvertently, not highlighted. But did you hear what was said about Canada pensions and how they're heavily invested in the United States? That's the truth. The other night, when Brandon was on, we were talking about a record number of topics, but in a single podcast. But he did mention, he complained that these numbers are crazy. He said that Canada had given away, I think he said $1 trillion of the Canada pension plan money to India. And I know that story in various forms is circulating out there, and it's crazy talk. It's not true, and the people who are buying this stuff don't even understand how the Canada pension plan works, or even how pension funds work, or sovereign wealth funds. It's insane. That's not true. The government didn't just give away $1 trillion of Canadians' pension money to India. See, the pension funds are big blocks of money that people invest in, whether it's a private pension plan or a government pension plan. The money goes into a big pot, essentially, and then it's invested, which people don't realize. A lot of people think the money just sits there and accumulates in a bank account, or the government just sets it all aside for a rainy day. No, they don't. It can't work that way. It has to be invested so that it earns interest and or dividends over time, so that it grows along, so that when you get to retirement age, when we all get to retirement age, there will be sufficient funds in there for people to withdraw what they are entitled to as their pension money and live from that. So so that it can be liquidated eventually with more value. It's an investment. That's like anything that you do. You invest or you buy various kinds of investments, stocks, whatever. You save for your retirement, but you don't just save your money for retirement. You invest so that it grows over time, so that you have enough to live on after you retire. That's what the CPP is all about. But the government itself, Mark Carney doesn't administer the CPP. There's an arm's length board of directors, an arm's length organization that is responsible for administering those funds. And in fact, it's arm's length from day-to-day management by the government in order to prevent abuse and fraud and corruption and prevent the government from tapping into it and stealing your money. Now, government can get access to some of that stuff, but that's not what has been going on at all. And the truth of the matter is what you just heard right there in that interview is the truth. Even a lot of Canadian pension plans, whether they're provincially run by provincial governments or whether they're run by unions or corporations or whatever, the Ontario teachers have a huge pension fund that is invested in all kinds of different things. It's diversified. That is the case with the CPP as well. But what you just heard in that interview is true. About 47% of all the money in the CPP is invested in the U.S., in companies in the United States. And that has been invested in the U.S. by the arm's length board that controls or administers the funds and watches the investments day to day. It's just like if you have a mutual fund or retirement money and you have someone at a bank or an investment company managing your affairs day to day so they can keep an eye on your investments for you so you don't have to. You get somebody who's a professional in that area to keep an eye on it all, buy and sell and move your money around, and they have certain permissions from you to do so. That's what's been going on with the CPP, and it grows. And it's very large. I'm not sure what the total value is right now. I'd have to check that out and refresh my memory on it. But I know that about 45 to 47% of all the CPP money is invested in U.S. companies. So it's not that the government took like $1 trillion and just gave it away to India. That's not true. The CPP does have some funds invested in Asian countries. But even when you look at that, I think in all of Asia, the CPP has about 17% of the funds invested in Asian countries. And that includes all Asian countries. I don't know what the breakdown is exactly. China, India. So you look at India, it would only be a portion of that 17%. So I don't know what it works out to for India. There might be 5%, 3% invested in India. And people might say, well, why isn't it all invested in Canada? Well, because you want to diversify. You want to minimize your risk. And when you have a big pot of money like that, that's the smart thing to do. That's the responsible thing to do. And the board that administers those funds has a fiduciary duty to those who have invested their money over time, contributed to the fund by working. Your employer has to contribute to it, you contribute to it, and the government contributes to it. And it builds up over time, and then it's administered and invested. 47% approximately is invested in the U.S., and then the rest of it is invested, a bunch of it in Canada. But I don't think even the majority is invested in Canada. I think even there, I think in Canadian firms, the CPP, they only have about 12 to 15% right here in Canada itself. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Those investments grow, you build equity, and then the money comes back into Canada, and we as pension holders, you get your pension money at the end of it all. And the reason that they invest in all these different countries and different companies is to spread the risk, mitigate the risk, diversify. Diversification reduces risk. And the larger the fund is, the less risk there is for everyone through more diversification. The bigger it is, the more leverage the fund has, the better off everyone is when it's larger. When everybody puts their money in together, it makes it less risky for everyone. That's why the people out in Alberta are in much better shape sticking with the CPP than going off on their own. Not to mention there are going to be a lot of complications if they try to carve away that I'm sorry, I can't think when my phone keeps going off. I'll be right back.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News. Defending free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. tomorrow. Maybe too late. Too late. Too late. Too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
All right, we're back. I think I made my point. The point is, the government didn't steal your money and just give it away to India, okay? So if anybody's telling you that, they're lying or they're misinformed. Either way, it's not true. You don't need to worry on that level. There are other things we should be worrying about, but that's not one of them. That's all crazy talk. So, prove me wrong. For those of you who just insist on believing the worst of everything. What else do we have for you tonight? Okay, so there's all that. Oh, also, talking about food sovereignty, this is a big concern. Reports coming out of China that China is going to maybe cut off fertilizer shipments. Seems to be related to the oil crisis, the energy crisis, which is the result of all of this crazy stuff going on in the Middle East in this war with Iran. Seems to be somehow related to that. Not sure where all of that is going. It hasn't been officially ruled out. China hasn't officially released information on what they're planning to do. Many media reports coming out of China tonight, though, with regard to that, and China, one of the biggest exporters of fertilizers, including things like urea, nitrogen. Farmers rely on this stuff in order to feed the world. China doing it apparently because they're concerned about, a global economic downturn, all of this disruption in the Middle East, shipping issues, getting fertilizer to market, and they are trying to protect their food sovereignty, their food security, because that is a national security issue for them, especially with the massive population they have there. They need to be able to feed their people too. So it's China first is what you're getting over in that part of Asia, and that could potentially can come home to roost right here in Canada and the U.S. because that could affect our food supplies. Again, you want to talk about inflation? Oh baby, that will jack up prices in supermarkets too, because with less fertilizer on the market, less fertilizer available, and with the largest fertilizer supplier in the world potentially shutting down supply, it's going to raise the price of fertilizer, and that means a huge boost to the price of food. Trump promised lower prices, and we're not getting them. He can talk about the numbers all he wants, but inflation, baby. Inflation, it's coming. Speaking of inflation, here, I'll show you the headline. Here's the Canadian Cattlemen talking about it in their online publication tonight. China restricts fertilizer exports, further crimping war-tightened supply. See, this is the thing about a war. You get into a war, and you just don't know where it's going to go. And that's what's happening with this whole situation with Iran right now. People seem to think this one's going to be over, reasonably quickly. I kind of have that feeling too, but at the same time, something in the back of my mind keeps gnawing at me, and I keep saying this, probably going to go on longer, a lot longer than anybody expects, because these things always have a way of spiraling out of control. What's going on with the actual oil prices tonight? Well, they hit somewhere around $114 a barrel overnight because of all this. Let's go and take a look right now and see what's happening. Here's crude oil prices today at oilprice.com. And right now, as it stands, WTI crude 94.39, Brent crude 108, Murban crude 124 a barrel. The OPEC basket, 135. This is lower than it was. It actually came down. It has been going up and down in like a bit of a yo-yo. But it was down to $84, if you recall, just a few days ago. Now it's right back up over $100 a barrel. That's having an impact on gasoline prices. And that's going to affect inflation. It already is. Let's take a look at the headlines. This is why there's so much focus tonight on Canadian oil in New York with Pierre Poilievre and his appearance down there. Natural gas price today. Europe gas hits highest since 2023 after Qatar attack. That's a tech stock. That's from 2 hours ago. What other headlines are we getting? CBC, global markets sink, fuel prices soar as Iran hits Gulf refineries in multiple countries. New York Times, Iran war live updates as oil and gas prices soar. Trump seeks to reassure. Good luck. Gas prices at highest level since 2023 in U.S. amid Iran war. Global National. Live updates. Energy prices soar after Trump threatens to rain gas fields. F-35 hit. This is NBC. 5 minutes ago. Here we go.
Is rapidly becoming a war on the world's energy supply. Iran attacked oil facilities overnight in Saudi Arabia, and as they burned, Iran hit more oil and gas sites in Qatar, the UAE, and Kuwait. It's retaliation, Iran says, after Israel yesterday attacked the South Pars natural gas refinery on the Iranian coast. That was a major escalation. The entire Pars field holds the largest natural gas reserves in the world. Both Iran and Qatar across the Gulf draw gas from the field. And as Iran hit back on a refinery in Qatar, a senior official close to Qatar's leaders tells NBC News Qatar is livid with Iran and Israel and Washington, furious that a war now partially being framed as protecting the flow of oil and gas is setting them ablaze. President Trump posted on Truth Social that the U.S. was not involved in the original hit on the South Pars field in Iran, saying, quote, the United States knew nothing about this particular attack. Not true, according to the Qatari official. And Axios, citing Israeli and U.S. officials, reports the U.S. coordinated and approved the strike. In his post, President Trump continued that if Iran attacks Qatar again, the U.S. will massively blow up the entirety of the South Pars gas field at an amount of strength and power that Iran has never seen or witnessed before. The death toll from this war is continuing to climb. Overnight, an Iranian missile fired at Israel was intercepted mid-air. Fragments landed on a village in the West Bank, killing 3 Palestinian women at a beauty salon. They were having their hair done for the upcoming Muslim Eid holiday.
President Trump's justification for this war has been evolving. It was initially launched, described as a preemptive attack by the U.S. and Israel, because President Trump said that Iran was about to have and use nuclear weapons, although he didn't present any evidence that that was even technically possible. Now it has become a war to protect global energy supplies. Craig?
Richard Ingleforth there in Israel. Richard, thank you.
Yeah, Now it's a war to protect global energy supplies. What happened that global energy supplies are threatened? Oh yeah, Trump attacked Iran. Caused the problem, now he's offering a solution. Oh, but he needs help now. This is terrible. Yeah. And Canada's treated the United States so unfairly because only 95 to 98% of everything shipped to Canada comes in tariff-free. It's so unfair. And they paid for the whole bridge. And it's just a crappy deal. We need a better deal. I don't know. This guy has lost his freaking mind. Or he too might be incredibly misinformed. Maybe somebody's just maybe he's just a puppet that people are just telling him what to say. I don't know. It's not cool. It's not cool at all. But as much as he might be a person who is being told what to say, he kind of screws it up a lot. Did you hear what he said today? Are you aware of this? He met with Japan's prime minister and talk about a freaking disaster. This is my jaw dropped. My jaw dropped when I heard this. It shouldn't, because anymore, I don't know if he's suffering from dementia or if he's just turned into the world's biggest a-hole. Look, I'm going to show it to you. This is, I couldn't believe he said this. All right, here it is. Listen.
U.S. allies in Europe and Asia, like Japan, about the war before attacking Iran. So we are very confused about we Japanese citizens.
Well, one thing you don't want to signal too much. When we go in, we went in.
So if you couldn't hear, reporter asked Trump, why didn't he warn U.S. allies before attacking Iran? And this is his response.
Japan about the war before attacking Iran. So we are very confused about we Japanese citizens.
Well, one thing you don't want to signal too much. When we go in, we went in very hard, and we didn't tell anybody about it because we wanted surprise. Who knows better about surprise than Japan? Okay? Why didn't you tell me about Pearl Harbor? Okay? Right? He's asking me.
U.S. allies.
Just what? Did you see the eyes of the Japanese prime minister when he said that? Wow. If you need someone to say just the wrong thing at a critical moment, he's your guy. It is just unbelievable. Isn't it ironic that we were talking? Remember how I sort of put Pearl Harbor and then the subsequent Doolittle raid on Tokyo together with the war in Iran the other night, and then we got into the whole discussion about the attack on Pearl Harbor and the history, and it's I don't know, is Trump watching this program or something? Anyway, and then it came together again today, because the reason I highlighted it was because there's all this rhetoric coming from the U.S. about the possibility of, they're saying there's a real possible threat of a drone attack from Iran launched from the sea against California or something. I don't know where the evidence is on that. They haven't really shown us any evidence. They just say it's something of a credible threat. I guess we just have to take them at their word. I don't know if any of that is true, because I just don't know what to believe when it comes to any of that anymore. I just don't know. And like I was saying, even the photos coming out of Iran that are meant to illustrate the mass killings that we've been told about by the Iranian regime. And don't get me wrong, I'm not sticking up for them, because they're pretty brutal. And they have killed a lot of people. I know that is true. But the photos look just like the photos that we were subjected to during the earliest days of the pandemic, when they were showing us bodies. that I think, in hindsight, may not have been as, what would be the right word, authentic as maybe we thought they were at the time. But we're all becoming a little bit more social media and AI tech savvy, aren't we? As we're subjected to more and more of this fake news and fake information, it's becoming a little easier to spot it in some ways, but then also it's becoming more difficult because the technology is evolving. It's getting better and better and better all the time. I don't really want to show you the images of the bodies because it's a pretty sensitive thing, and I don't want to get YouTube upset in any way, so I'm not going to show them to you. But you can go online. You just look for the image. Just Google like 30,000 Iranian deaths, and then find some images coming out of Iran from the pandemic, and then look at them and look at the way that they're shot. The interesting thing about most of these images, about the 30,000 dead that are supposed to be out there, is they're all in body bags. I'm sorry about the language if it's disturbing you at all, but it almost, there's something about those pictures that just doesn't seem right, and I would think that there would be more as well. But a lot of this stuff coming out of these war zones, including Gaza, and especially what came out after October 7th, a lot of that stuff, some of it didn't look right. So I just leave that with you. You can do your own research on that one. I'm not sure what to make of it. But definitely we're being subjected to manipulation. That is for sure. On one level or another, and on multiple fronts, multiple governments doing this to us. Let's take a look at what Trump actually did post on Truth Social. I did read this, and even this made my jaw drop. What did he say here? He says, Israel, out of anger for what has taken place in the Middle East, has violently lashed out at a major facility known as South Pars gas field in Iran. A relatively small section of the whole has been hit. The United States knew nothing about this particular attack, which we're being told tonight, at least in that NBC report, and I think in other places, that Trump is lying about that. And I think there is evidence to support the assertion that he is lying. And the country of Qatar was in no way, shape, or form involved with it, nor did it have any idea that it was going to happen, the United States. And we're told he's lying. Unfortunately, Iran did not know this, or any of the pertinent facts pertaining to the South Pars attack, and unjustifiably and unfairly attacked a portion of Qatar's LNG gas facility. All caps, no more attacks will be made by Israel pertaining to this extremely important and valuable South Pars field unless Iran unwisely decides to attack a very innocent, in this case Qatar, in which instance the United States of America, with or without the help or consent of Israel, will massively blow up the entirety of the South Pars gas field at an amount of strength and power that Iran has never seen or witnessed before. I do not want to authorize this level of violence and destruction because of the long-term implications that it will have on the future of Iran. But if Qatar's LNG is again attacked, I will not hesitate to do so. Thank you for your attention to this matter. I think personally that it is probably highly unlikely that Trump will blow that thing up, because I think he wants it. Readers added context they thought people might want to know. Contrary to Trump's claim, this is over on the side on Grok, the U.S. was informed of the plan ahead of time and had no issues with it, according to American and Israeli officials. President Trump approved the strike, U.S. officials said, to pressure Iran to unblock the Strait of Hormuz. And there's an article over there on Axios.com with the supporting information. You can look it up. We've heard more than one media outlet now saying this, and I don't know what else to tell you except, yeah, he lies a lot. and it's damaging the United States. Now, it looks like he might even tell Israel to go pound salt. So they will truly be alone, potentially. Bad news for America. Really bad. Netanyahu also denying that they are the tail wagging the American dog. He's saying Trump makes his own decisions. That's interesting. And he has a message for Iran. This just posted. I'll bring this up. This was from just a few hours ago. Here's what Bibi has to say.
The past 24 hours, we knocked out 2 of the terrorist chieftains, the top terrorist chieftains of this tyranny. Our aircraft are hitting
actually from the 17th.
terror operatives on the ground, in the crossroads, in the city squares. This is meant to enable the brave people of Iran to celebrate the Festival of Fire. So celebrate and Happy Nowruz. We're watching from above. The past 24 hours.
This is the Prime Minister of Qatar saying the war needs to end immediately. Interesting, too, you know, I think that if you give gifts to Donald Trump, he might tend to protect you.
Say that this war needs to stop immediately. The aggression needs to stop immediately, because everyone knows who is the big beneficiary of this war and dragging the whole region into this conflict. And unfortunately, what's taking place now, it's a serve for those agendas. Thank you very much.
That was the translator. Audio a little bit low, but that's what he's saying, is the war has to end immediately. And I think that's really why Trump posted that on Truth Social. I think he was under pressure from Qatar. So maybe Qatar is the tail wagging the dog to some degree now, too. We shall see. I'm not going to run any clips from the Joe Rogan interview with Pierre Poilievre because, generally speaking, that stuff is copyrighted. And every time we run a clip from the Joe Rogan broadcast, we get hammered on YouTube. So I'm staying away from it. You know what's going on. And Pierre Poilievre has had plenty of access to our platform here tonight. Now, a joint statement has been released by the UK, France, Germany, and Italy, and the Netherlands and Japan, condemning recent attacks by Iran on unarmed commercial vessels in the Gulf. I think we have a clip here. Yeah, we do. We can go over here to Sky News for just a moment for a short hit.
Breaking news in the last few minutes is that a joint statement has been released by the UK, also by France, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands and Japan. And it's about the Strait of Hormuz. They are condemning in the strongest terms recent attacks by Iran on unarmed commercial vessels in the Gulf, attacks on civilian infrastructure, including oil and gas installations, and the de facto closure of the Strait of Hormuz by Iranian forces. The countries go on to say they express their deep concern about the escalating conflict. They call on Iran to cease immediately its threats, laying of mines, drone and missile attacks and other attempts to block the strait to commercial shipping, and to comply with UN Security Council Resolution 2817. They say freedom of navigation is a fundamental principle of international law, including under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, and the effect of Iran's actions will be felt by people in all parts of the world, especially the most vulnerable. They say that the interference constitutes a threat to international peace and security, and call for an immediate, comprehensive moratorium on attacks on civil infrastructure, including oil and gas installations. The countries say they're ready to contribute to appropriate efforts to ensure safe passage through the strait. We welcome the commitment of nations who are engaging in preparatory planning, and that they welcome the International Energy Agency's decision to authorise a coordinated release of strategic petroleum reserves, and that they'll take other steps to stabilise energy markets, including working with certain producing nations to increase output. They're also going to work to support the most affected, including through the United Nations and IFIs. And then the letter closes with maritime security and freedom of navigation benefit all countries. We call on all states to respect international law and uphold the fundamental principles of international prosperity and security. Also, in the last few minutes, we've heard via the Reuters agency, 3 Israeli generals have told them that Israel's attack on Iran's South Pars gas field was coordinated with the US, but will likely not be repeated. That is from 3 Israeli officials to Reuters. Well, let's go live to Westminster and our chief political correspondent, John Craig. So a clear message from the UK government alongside France, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands and Japan to Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. How significant would you say it is, John, that this statement doesn't mention the US, doesn't mention Israel?
Well, the key paragraph in here is where it says we express our readiness to contribute to appropriate efforts to ensure safe passage through the Strait. And we welcome the commitment of nations who are engaging in preparatory planning. Now, we know that despite all the criticism of the Prime Minister and the UK government and other Europeans by President Trump and members of his administration, that British military planners are talking to the Americans about how they try to ensure the safe passage of ships through the Strait. The other thing that stands out about this statement straight away, this is not just the Europeans. It's UK, France, Germany, Italy, Netherlands and Japan. So the coalition, if you like, is broadening to include Japan now. They're allying with the Europeans. Now, of course, Jane, it does come after some pretty ferocious criticism of the Europeans, particularly Keir Starmer in recent days, by the President, saying that the UK has been unhelpful. We recall a couple of times now the President has said that Starmer is no Churchill and that he turned down requests and so on. The Prime Minister, of course, is very determined to keep on good terms with the President and while, of course, not getting involved in offensive action. But the timing of this is significant also because it comes on a day when the oil and gas prices have surged after strikes on facilities in Iran and Qatar, the world's largest natural gas field. And of course, Donald Trump has threatened to, in his words, massively blow up Iran's major gas field if Tehran attacks Qatar again. So in other words, the conflict is escalating, and it's escalating in a way that is designed clearly to cause maximum problems for the West because of the attacks on infrastructure and particularly oil and gas infrastructure. Now, in this statement, which no doubt follows phone calls between all the various leaders, including the Prime Minister, as you'd expect, they're expressing their deep concern about the escalating conflict, calling on Iran to cease immediately threats, laying of mines, drones and missile attacks. Now, there isn't any mention of the United States in particular. Does say, though, that it talks about international law. Freedom of navigation is a fundamental principle of international law. It talks about the United Nations Convention of the Law of the Sea. This, of course, follows criticism of those who, in the American administration, Pete Hegseth, for example, the Defense Secretary, dismissing, mocking, if you like, those who say that international law matters. But it does condemn Iran, of course. The effects of Iran's action be felt by people in all parts of the world, especially the most vulnerable. Well, that's a reference, of course, to the price of oil and other energy sources shooting up in recent days. And the Prime Minister has talked about the vulnerable, the poorest being hardest hit by those price increases. And of course, he, a couple of days ago, announced help for those who rely on heating oil, and he said that was directed at the most vulnerable.
Bad news. Here's what the attack on the South Pars oil field looked like.
Hello, you guys. Oh, shit. Oh, Ray. Oh, my God. अब यार भाग क्यों रहे हो? Oh, shit. अब यार किसने किधर गिरा? अरे वहाँ गिरा सामने तो गिरा और किधर गिरा? इधर गिरा. अरे शाला. अब यार पीछे से मार रहा है, हाँ? उधर से आ रहा है. Oh shit! Hello, you guys.
Oh shit. Yeah, that's for sure. Holy crap. We'll be right back.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, defending free speech, Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Another clip from Benjamin Netanyahu on this.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Gary Azriel, I-24 News. President Trump said today he did not like the Israeli strike on the Iranian gas fields. My question to you, was the president aware of Israel striking that gas field? Did you approve it? And please, if you may, do you see any signs that the Iranian regime is collapsing? And what assurances do you give the Israeli public that if it does stand on its feet, we will not see another wave of a war with Iran in maybe 5 or 10 years?
Well, I'll say two things. Fact number one, Israel acted alone against the Slawiya gas compound. Fact number two, President Trump asked us to hold off on future attacks, and we're holding it. What do we see? What happens if are there any signs that the Iranian regime is cracking? A lot of signs. A lot of signs. I wish I could divulge all of them, but I see that. But will I tell you, will I commit right now that it's going to collapse? I can tell you that we're working to create the conditions for it to collapse. But it may survive, it may not. If it survives, it'll be a lot weaker. There's no comparison. It'll be at its weakest point, shorn of industries that it built over decades, death industries, shorn of many other capabilities that they have, and equipped with the experience, with the knowledge that if they try it again, they'll be hit again even harder. I cannot tell you of the technological developments that we are engaged in to anticipate this and other possibilities. But Israel has shown that it can do wondrous things. And in partnership with our American allies, we can do amazing things. Amazing things. As Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, said, these are the two most amazing air forces in the world. It's the two most amazing intelligence services in the world. It has the capabilities to confront these barbarians and to outstrip them, both in innovation and, when necessary, in lethality. It's directed, it's targeted lethality. It's going against the killers, and as much as possible to avoid civilian casualties. We have those capacities. We're building them for the future. That is what safeguards the future.
Joe Kent, we told you about him resigning as director of national counterterrorism. Now he's being targeted with an investigation. Conservative podcasters, live streamers, influencers focused very much on him. Let's go to this interview, this clip from the Tucker Carlson show.
Was Iran on the verge of getting a nuclear weapon?
No, they weren't, 3 weeks ago when this started, and they weren't in June either. I mean, the Iranians have had a religious ruling, a fatwa, against actually developing a nuclear weapon since 2004. That's been in place since 2004. That's available in the public sphere. But then also we had no intelligence to indicate that fatwa was being disobeyed or it was on the cusp of being lifted. The Iranian strategy, it's actually pretty pragmatic. The Iranians are obviously aware of what's taking place in their region, and their strategy was to not completely abandon their nuclear program because they saw what happened to Muammar Gaddafi in Libya when he said, hey, I've got no more nukes. I'll do what you say. I'll give up my nukes.
And we gave him the Nobel Peace Prize?
Yeah, we regime changed him, and he was executed by his own people in the most horrific way.
Oh, sodomized by a bayonet. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Was Iran on the verge of getting a nuclear weapon?
No, they weren't, 3 weeks ago when this started, and they weren't in June either. I mean, the Iranians have had a religious ruling, a fatwa, against actually developing a nuclear weapon since 2004. That's been in place since 2004. That's available in the public sphere. But then also we had no intelligence to indicate that fatwa was being disobeyed or it was on the cusp of being lifted. The Iranian strategy, it's actually pretty pragmatic. The Iranians are obviously aware of what's taking place in their region, and their strategy was to not completely abandon their nuclear program because they saw what happened to Muammar Gaddafi in Libya when he said, hey, I've got no more nukes. I'll do what you say. I'll give up my nukes.
And we gave him the Nobel Peace Prize?
Yeah,
So you're seeing another crack in the MAGA base, right? More division tonight. And more division among NATO allies. Trump has certainly disrupted the world order, hasn't he? Yes, everything's kind of gone through, what would that be? Oh yeah, a great reset. The old world order is gone. And the new world order seems to be taking shape. And one guy is clearly at the center of it all. Keir Starmer in particular, at odds with Trump because Trump has been so aggressive with his attacks on Keir Starmer. Let me see if I can find his post here on NATO. I think he just put something new up today. There was something. I may not be able to get it for you in a timely fashion. Let's just do a scroll on his Twitter page. We'll do it together. Here we go. He says, warmest wishes to Muslims who are marking the end of Ramadan across the UK and around the world. He says here, I'm proud of our tolerant and diverse country. I'm proud that at Trafalgar Square we celebrate all faiths. That's British values. I send my deepest condolences to the family and friends of the two students who tragically died following the outbreak of meningitis in Kent. The Middle East conflict this is March 17th now. Increase the need for rapid military innovation. It's central to our national and economic security. I did see a recent post with a statement about Trump and NATO when Trump was threatening to pull out of NATO or not support it anymore. Or at least that's what the talk was in media for a day or two. I'm not sure how far back we have to go to find it, but it is actually a couple of days old. So with that being said, have you seen the have you seen all this stuff about the 50% proposed tax on OnlyFans in Florida? I think we might talk about this maybe a little more tomorrow. It came in my feed last night, yesterday sometime. This story right here. And I had no idea. But it's obscene. The most obscene thing though is the money that some of these OnlyFans models, influencers, whatever you want to call them, are making. I had no freaking idea. Here, I'll run a little bit of this for you. Well, maybe we'll talk about it now. I was going to hold it for tomorrow, but here we go.
I mean, this state is covered in strip clubs. It's silly to say, like, oh, we're going to have morals now.
He calls this a sin tax. Yeah. Do you view what you're doing as sinful?
At the end of the day, who are you to judge sin?
Florida's only...
Okay, this is some girl who's like one of the top people on OnlyFans. He's going to ask her how much money she makes. Listen to this.
And women are speaking out.
A Florida politician trying to start beef with me for clout.
James Fishback, a Republican primary candidate for governor here, wants to bring in what he calls a 50% sin tax
on whatever you so-called earn via that online degeneracy platform.
Do you think for the voters of Florida that OnlyFans is really a major issue?
We don't want our women in Florida to feel as if the only way they can make a living is by selling nude images or videos on the internet to complete strangers. My view is really simple. If OnlyFans did not exist in Florida, we would be better off for it.
I honestly disagree. I think that it's great. It just has created so many opportunities for me, and I'm so thankful to even be here.
Sophie Rain, a Florida native, is one of the world's biggest OnlyFans stars. And how much money have you made now?
I have just hit $100 million.
$100 million.
Mm-hmm.
Anya Lacey.
What? $100 million. What? I didn't believe it. So I looked some of it up. I still don't believe it, but I found other reports of other people doing this that are making like 40 million, 80 million a year. I'm like, where do I get my bikini? I'd scare them all away. Oh my God, the money. That's obscene. This is the hypocrisy of American society. Everybody's like Epstein files, and meanwhile, they're throwing money at this. I had no idea that there was that kind of money involved in. I mean, I know there's money in, always in the sex industry, right? But my God, anybody else shocked by that? Anybody? What? $100 million that girl has made. Woman. Unbelievable. Unfreaking believable. Well, how? The Dragon's saying how? I guess people just, they give money to, I don't know. It's sort of like a super chat kind of a thing, I guess. And it's interactive, I expect, so you can give money and then interact and say, do this, do that, I guess. It's like an online sex thing. I don't know. I think that's how it's done. Is that the way they do it? Yeah, Rick, no joke. Sex sells, says Jubilee. Sure does, apparently. All right. I know. No, I'm not wearing a bikini for Maverick Midnight Matinee tomorrow night. I'm not doing it. Sorry. No can do. Bad enough that we were sent that, and I subjected you to that AI generated Elvira version of me, which was funny. But I'm not putting on a bikini to host the watch party. Ain't it gonna happen? Not even for $100 million. That being said, I will be back tomorrow night, though. Now, Brandon wasn't available again today to come back to resume the conversation as he had suggested on Alberta separatism, but he says he will come back maybe over the weekend or maybe the first of next week. We shall see. But tomorrow, definitely Maverick Midnight Matinee. And I watched Melania, the movie. Maybe I'll give you a bit of a review on that tomorrow. It's a little after the fact, I guess, but I think I can give you a quick overview and a quick review of that film before we get into tomorrow night's watch party. Plus, Joseph messaged me from Detroit, and he is suggesting another movie that we might review in the very near future as well. So I'll see what that is, and we'll be back here at 7 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. On the flip side, hold on to your wallets. Inflation is on the rise.
Under neon lights after 24/7. Cereal boxes stacked like they're from heaven. Cartwheels squeak while hearts untucked. Past the pickles and we're straight up struck. Midnight grocery run, feeling so divine. Bananas in the basket and we're losing track of time. Laughing through the aisles with you right by my side. This midnight grocery run's a wild ride. Frozen pizzas and a chocolate pie. Scanning items neath the starry sky. Fluorescent glow makes everything so real. In this wonderland we break the seal. Midnight grocery run, feeling so divine. Bananas in the basket and we're losing track of time. Laughing through the aisles with you right by my side. This midnight grocery run's a wild ride. Here's what they know the drill. Moonlit moments give a midnight thrill. We dance down aisle 4 like no one sees. Just some dreamers lost in fantasies. Midnight grocery run, feeling so divine. Bananas in the basket and we're losing track of time. Laughing through the aisles with you right by my side. This midnight grocery run's a wild ride.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.